Doctors of Reddit, what is your how the hell are you even alive right now story? One time I had a patient who was walking in the street. Got hit by a car. Thrown into oncoming traffic. Bounced off another car. And then got pinned under a third. Or so the EMS report said. He had a dislocated shoulder and a non-displaced femur fracture. He was on coke. Which probably explained how he was able to scream at the trauma team to leave him alone. Edit, this happened a few months ago. Not Joe Black. When I was in trauma surgery in upstate by. Got a notification about a man who was shot 3 times in the head. He comes in. Literally one eye hanging out of the socket. Blood everywhere. And he slumped forward. Apparently he was shot in the temple. Exited out his right eye socket. In the nose exited from the roof of the mouth. And in the cheek one with exit from the side of the head. At this point I'm thinking they just brought him in so we can pronounce him in the ER because he looked dead. I go to examine him and tilt his head back. And he says you be gentle. I jump back and scream like a little boy. As did everyone in the room. Literally the bullets missed his brain in every single shot. My friend's father is an orthopedic surgeon and he told us a story that once a boyfriend and girlfriend came in because they tried an in-home abortion. By running her pelvis over with a car. Abortion worked but I hope they actually never reproduce. We have a patient we see at our hospital monthly. Young guy. Early 20s. Absolute turd to take care of. He has diabetes and essentially refuses to take his insulin. He comes in every time with diabetic ketoacidosis. Which is essentially your body going into a coma-like state due to your blood pH becoming acidotic and very elevated sugars. The impressive part isn't that he survives this. Most people do. It's that this is a recurring event every month and each time someone manages to find him get him to the hospital. If he was ever alone when this occurred and no one found him in a timely fashion, he'd be toast. Been seeing him regularly at the hospital for the last 18 months I've been here. Since you didn't specify how long they stayed alive. In med school I had a patient who got shot in the head a couple blocks away from the hospital. He was still able to talk for a few minutes after arrival. But it was clearly not a survivable injury. I stayed with him as his brain started to swell. I remember the moment his eyes became dull and his speech slurred to a stop. I work with a dude that has a family history of heart disease. Not many males in his immediate family branch reach past the age of 60. This man only has one vice. Food. I've seen him in action. At one point his caloric intake was over 10,000 calories a day. It's almost obscene of how many burger meals and giant tubs of soda he puts away in a day. I don't know the count but when he does need to see a doctor, they always marvel of how he is upright and not dead with his blood pressure so high. He's been told more than once that he should be dead. Edit, even more surprising. He is not obese. He's pudgy and has that dad belly. But not enormous. He's certainly a wonder. Paramedic here. I ran a call on a guy that was ejected out of a late 80s Mustang. The guy said the car rolled 2 times before pitching him out of the driver's side window. He said he landed on his head and the 7-inch scalp avulsion seemed to corroborate his story. The car was completely crushed and sitting on its top. The guy wanted to refuse treatment and transport. GCS 15 and never lost consciousness. I insisted though that he be seen at the ER. He rode the whole way texting people. When I told him that he shouldn't be alive he said yeah I got a hard nugget. Not a doctor. But when I was 18. My mom was at a stoplight when she was rear-ended by a diesel truck going 60. Her back was broken and her brain was bleeding. At the hospital. Her kidneys started to fail. She had internal bleeding. And her blood pressure was in the 20s. The doctor told us these facts and told us to say goodbye. A priest was there and offered her last rites. The next day she was stabilized and I can remember the doctor looking at her like WTF. I am a doctor. My moment to shine. Patient was driving a motorbike. We were informed that dispatch had been sent to pick up a motorbike vs logging truck. Bike was behind the truck which had lost its load of logs at highway speeds. Trauma team is activated. We have called for blood. Guy walked out of the ER after period of observation. When he saw the logging truck lose its load, he simply let go of his bike and fell off the back. Rolled a bit and got some bumps and bruises. But fine. Second case off the top of my head was a 92-year-old lady with urosepsis, bacterial infection in her blood from a urinary tract infection. Her initial gas had a pH of around 6.7 and a lactate of 12, too acidic and too high for the non-medical peeps. Young patients would have a hard time surviving that, let alone the very elderly. She was unconscious, but had received 1 dose of Cipro, an antibiotic, by mouth from her family doctor before becoming altered. Family agreed to her comfort, do not resuscitate, level of care, and said their goodbyes. The next morning, the resident on call got pages asking if Mrs. Blah 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 could eat. She was awake and hungry. Guess the dose of Cipro kicked in. My dad had a massive heart attack a few years ago. He proceeded to drive around for several hours disoriented and confused to where the hospital was. He went to a closed fire station and drove around the city for who knows how long. He had a complete 100% blockage in his left anterior descending artery. They call it the Widowmaker. Blessed to still have my old man around, to say the least. Not a medical doctor, but I am, almost, 1/8 of my way through optometry school. Do I need to say not a doctor at this point? I feel like it's a given. When I was in 9th grade, a friend of mine got into a car wreck. It was a car full of teens in the middle of the day. There were no injuries, but one of the parents insisted that all of them go to the doctor and get x-rays. Mind you, these are lower class people in a podunk town in the podunk state of Kansas. So the fact that someone felt strongly about this and they all took it seriously is a miracle in itself. After hours of waiting around and taking turns, my friend goes in for her x-ray. When they look at the x-ray, they realize her neck is broken. It's called a hangman's break because that is how your neck breaks at the gallows. Her spine is entirely broken, just sitting on top of itself. All she had to do at any point was tilt her head up, sneeze, whatever, and she would have instantly died. It's just insane thinking about. They put her in a halo, think Gretchen Whiners, and she healed and was fine. Edit. Okay. Regina George. No idea so many people are so passionate about Mean Girls. But my bad. I'm not a doctor, but I was EMS for a few years, and one day we came up on an accident on the highway involving a motorcyclist and a minivan. Usually that is not good at all. It's always a mess. We get there and find out he hit the minivan at 80 miles per hour while it was stopped on the side of the road and flew through the back window, through to the front, and survived without a scratch on him. No broken bone, no amps, altered mental status, a blunt head trauma. He even got himself out the van and asked if the people inside were okay. He was wearing a helmet and I think that saved his life. Blew my ducking mind. I've been struck by 3 cars. Worked in a coal mine until a shaft collapsed with my team in it. Worked making fireworks until a stray spark detonated the powder shack I was walking out of. I've fallen off of roofs. And was even a passenger in a Jeep that flipped. My only excuse is I'm too ugly to die, lol. Bit 7 times by a brown recluse spider when I was 5. Don't even have scars. Doctor said by the 3rd bite I should have been in convulsions. I just remember they itched a lot. My father-in-law went to the ER for some sort of pain and it was discovered that he had over 300 blood clots in his legs. Every single blood clot dissolved and he's alive and well. I saw a guy who got shot 9 times. 3 of which were in the neck. Nothing important got hit. So we just cleaned out the wounds, packed and covered them. And that was it. You can't kill cockroaches. A former attending. Trauma is a disease. Every trauma surgeon ever, the implication being people who do stupid shit and get hurt, are going keep doing stupid shit and getting hurt. And in my experience it is true. Especially drunk drivers. Nice folks though, always have some terrible disease. If you want to live forever, just be a big dig. CVT here. I had a cat come in with severe renal failure. At least 95% of the kidneys were completely dead and blood was barely circulating through them. The blood toxicity levels were the highest I have ever seen while I've been in practice. It was amazing the cat could even stand on its own. It didn't make it very long, but I still found it amazing. Not a doc, but I'm a paramedic. I had a patient shot 6 times in the chest with a 9mm at point blank range. Homie was still yelling at the other dude, now in custody, how he was gonna get out of the hospital and find him. I was pretty dumbfounded at how lucky this bastard was, considering most people don't yell after 6 shots in the chest. Obligatory not doctor disclaimer. About a year and a half ago, a friend of mine was going mountain biking. He wasn't actually on the mountain yet, just riding his bike over to a friend's house. They were going up on the mountain together. He stopped to tie his shoe and, for some reason, took off his helmet. Finished tying his shoe, pedaled 10 feet, and got hit by a car. Someone, we suspect it was the driver, called in an anonymous tip to the hospital. They found my friend with a broken skull on the side of the road, hospitalized him, then discovered that he had a bleed in the membrane between his skull and brain. It was pushing on brain tissue. I believe it was something like a 20% chance of survival. The trauma team drained his skull, stapled it back together, sewed his head up, and 2 days later he woke up extremely concussed and confused, but otherwise fine. Scared the hell out of us and his family. But all is well, except he occasionally feels the weather and gets a few more headaches than usual. Bright side to all of this is that he found his calling once he was back in the workforce. He immediately became a paramedic, and is currently getting his certification to work as a fire rescue paramedic. Now he saves other people's lives. Full circle. Not so much a how are you alive, but more of a how did you not know. Went in for a normal checkup to get my birth control renewed, only to see my blood pressure was through the roof. Thought nothing of it. Found out my kidneys were functioning at 11%. The only symptom I had that I thought was weird was my legs itched really bad. High phosphorus causes itching. My legs would itch so bad they bleed. Saw a dermatologist several times, they had nothing except maybe I was allergic to something. But I had no rash or anything. Turns out many other smaller things were issues. Feeling nauseous early in the morning. Migraine, stuff like that. They kept asking me, do you feel tired all the time? And weird weight gain, water retention. And I was baffled. I thought maybe they were wrong. 2 weeks later it hit my like a ton of bricks. Go to the point where I would be starving. Make myself some food, take one bite and get nauseous. Lost 15 pounds before I went on dialysis and had problems with that. Kidneys were functioning at 1-2% before I was lucky enough to get my kidney transplant. Very hard to understand and keep it together. Going from normal functioning 24-year-old to you need a transplant ASAP. My brother's girlfriend is a medical student. On her 2nd year she had a course on nursing. She had to help examine a woman who came for chest pain. She noticed an awful smell from the woman. The woman had stage IV breast cancer. Treated herself with homeopathy and her bobs were rotting. I'm the office manager, technician, secretary, janitor, accountant, what have you, sole employee. Woohoo, of an optometrist. Now, optometry isn't crazy exciting, so this'll be pretty tame compared to the other stuff posted. Patient is a rather elderly Hispanic woman. Presents with complaints with her near visual acuity and slight headaches. I take her in the back to refract her and take her eye up. Weird. Can't get a reading for the ARK. So now comes the tonometer. Right eye. 27. Double check. 24. HMMMM. I check the left eye. 49. 49. I double check it. 48. This lady's got full-blown glaucoma. Doc gets her in the chair. Turns out she's got glaucoma from leaking cataract and OS. And early diabetic retinopathy in both eyes. Her visual acuity is 20/400. This lady can't see sheet. And The kicker? She drove herself 24 miles to our office.